This is a test of the boundary part alert system. So we're recording the podcast today, Saturday the 6th of Feb. We were all gearing up to be analysing a post-match against Scunthorpe away, but it was one of, I think, about 5 games in League Two that succumbed to the rain. Obviously, I'm in Dublin, so we have different weather, but presumably you're getting a bit of a battering from the rain over there at the minute, and it's laid waste to a few games, so that's disappointing. But what I'll do is I'll go around. There's a couple of people who've not been on the podcast before. I will introduce you. You can say hello back to me so that everyone can hear your own individual voice and everybody knows who you are. We'll start with someone familiar that people will know. It's Will Goff from Push to Boundary. Say hello, Will.
Hello, Will.
I knew you were going to do that. Next up, because we've got 2 Wills, we'll put a Gareth in the middle so that everyone doesn't get confused. Gareth, now please forgive your surname. How's it pronounced?
Snook.
I wasn't sure if it was Snook or Snook. So Snook. So Gareth Snook. Hello, Gareth. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Matt. Nice one.
More than welcome. Thanks for joining us. Finally, last but not least, Will Holdaway down in London, another one of the Oasis bunch. How are you, Will? How are you doing?
Yeah, not bad. Thanks, Matthew. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure, and like I say all the time, it's a real pleasure to get to meet new people, new Latics fans from all over the place for this podcast. And Gareth, you've been messaging me wanting to come on, and I had to put you back once or twice because of whatever reason. Usually double booking and not writing it down and things like that. You know, really organised and professional as you would imagine. But you're on now, and yeah, what I'm going to do this week is just wing it a little bit because the match is not happened, so we don't get to start with that like we would usually. I'm sure you've all got stuff that you want to talk about. I'm just going to sort of like leave it up to you lads just to start the conversation, and we'll see where it goes. That's generally what happens anyway, so it's nothing different. But who wants to kick us off? Has anyone got anything pressing on the mind that they want to talk to about Latics from the last week or two, or in general?
I'm happy to kick us off, Matt. I think I've been sort of messaging you for a few weeks to come on just because I've missed kind of being able to have decent debate and chat with Latics fans, and I don't post on the message board that often anymore. I read it, and I find #OEFC a really frustrating place. So I just thought I need to speak to some chaps and know what they're talking about. Hence why I messaged you, really. I just find that our fans, because we'll be just so frustrated, aren't we? Just don't tweet much constructive tweets. They kind of just, this person's shit, everyone's shit, and just there's no balance to anything. And I just missed a balanced conversation with Latics fans. So that's my kind of reason.
You get extremes, don't you? So, you know, we lose a match and everyone's suicidal. Yeah. You know, we win a match and like we're looking at playoffs and automatic promotion. And we just don't have that balance. And you find that balance in between and you're a much happier fan.
You're a much happier human, Will, if we get a little bit more philosophical about it, you know. Maybe your consumption of Thatcher's cider is giving you a bit more zen than others, but you're dead right. Like, I don't know if you listened to last week's when I spoke to Mike Keegan. Like, you wouldn't realise that we'd won from the conversation that me and Mike had.
I listened to that today, and I was very depressed.
Yeah,
it was a great listen, but it did have that tone. Mike certainly had that tone to his kind of view, didn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the thing that stuck out for me was that he said there's a lot of players that aren't League Two standard. But he's only seen 3 games this season. So I kind of wondered how he came to that conclusion.
Agreed.
I would argue we do have players that are of a League Two standard because we're in the middle of the table, so that they hold their own. I think Mike's overriding tone was frustration at where we're at, I think, in this league. And you mentioned that with Hamer going to Burton, it's bloody Burton. And I think there's kind of that was just a typical Latics fan that he's frustrated with years and years of decline, I thought.
See, I thought that I know that tone of that conversation after a win was pretty down, but I thought that it was valid, and I thought that it's really pertinent because that's how a lot of Latics fans feel. And one win against Salford's not going to change it. We're still sitting mid-table, and there's a lot of it's big picture stuff. Really, it's difficult to. Even if we'd have won today against Scunthorpe, and we could have gone up to 11th if results had gone our way today, and we could have been right up there in the mix, until something actually really happens, like we get into the playoffs or we go up. That's the kind of spark that's going to tip the balance a little bit, isn't it? And until then, a lot of fans are staying away, and a lot of fans just can't shake it off. I think that's just the way we feel, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you read the IFC hashtag and you just think, as a group, we should be put on the couch and analysed, because this is a group of really despairing people reaching for extremes. We catastrophize when we draw or lose, or anything bad happens. We concede a corner when we shouldn't. People go bananas about it, and I'd like us all to be on the couch and to see what comes out of that.
I had a conversation with Professor James Reid, who's Professor of Economics, and we got into kind of talking about the psychology of people. And I think it's a really interesting study, and I think we would make a really, really good. He did touch that there was some studies on it, but I think in general, though, you talk about the hashtag, and obviously it's not a full representation of all our fans, but if you just think back to Boundary Park and you just think back to like what gets Oldham fans going and what doesn't get Oldham fans going, it tends to be sometimes the negative stuff that gets the Oldham fans going rather than the positive, the getting on someone's back or somebody, a bad foul, a bad decision, rather than actually sort of going in. I don't think that going into Boundary Park is often a positive mindset. And we were just saying earlier on, I think maybe before we press record, about what affects the home results. It's rare that you would go into Boundary Park before the game and there'd be a really vibrant atmosphere before it's kicked off, that sense of expectation. And I think that when you go away from Boundary Park and the away fans, they're out and they're having a good time, they're going to have a good day, their expectation is we're having a good time. And so the atmosphere before the game is lively. But there's definitely a contradiction between home and away in that respect.
Nobody been drinking since 9 o'clock in the morning, though.
Why don't we do that at home? Why don't this? Because this is something I've been thinking. Why don't people go into town? And why isn't there that same kind of? Is it because people don't want to do it every week? What do you think, Will?
That's a super question, Matt. And I've often thought that, because I mainly go away games. Might get to like one home game a season if I'm lucky or unlucky. But it's always a better atmosphere away, and it is because people make a day of it. And at home, I think what you'll find is the fan base will be just out doing their day-to-day stuff, out shopping on a Saturday, maybe take the dog for a walk, stuff like that. And then they turn up at the ground at maybe 2:55. And then they watch the football, not going out afterwards. They're going to wait till, 9 o'clock till they meet someone afterwards. A football day is, there's quite a lot of drinking, I suppose, which isn't everyone's bag. But that's why, people talk about the match day experience. Has the club really maximise their opportunities to make it a good match day experience for home and away fans?
There's definitely a massive amount of work to do in that respect, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, the opportunity's there to make it a really good away day for away fans, and that encourages everybody to make a bit of a party of it.
I think one of the things for away fans is it's not been traditionally the best place to get to by public transport, is it? It's handy by car, with it being right on the motorway and coach, and you need people turning up into the town centre for drinks and food and stuff before the game, and then making their way to the ground and stopping along the way and making a bit of a day of it, because we've all got our own favourite places to go away where we know it's a good day out. And you've kind of got your little route mapped in your head where you're going to go and all this kind of stuff.
So a train station, pub, chippy, ground.
Yeah, exactly.
Very convenient like that.
Yeah. Boundary Park does lack that pre-game. Now, when I'm going back years, because I'm of a certain vintage, where I remember walking down, usually Chaddy Way, that's where we'd park up over there, and walk down Chaddy Way, see the floodlights. There'd be a big crowd of people walking towards the ground. You'd be able to hear the noise and the atmosphere in the stadium before the game. Those days are a long time ago now, aren't they? Unfortunately,
that pub next to the ground, the Brewers Fair pub, is not great for a pre-match pint, is it? It's a family pub.
It's not great.
I was thinking of Clayton Arms as you were talking then, lads. I missed that place.
Yeah.
Which that was great in terms of that pre-match, somewhere to have a drink, the big room, the small room. I really miss that.
3 letters clanging around my head there, big O, E and C, just like,
Not safe. It's not safe, Matt. You can't go in there.
Yeah, we could take this combo in a completely different direction.
Have your eye out.
There's less pubs around there now than there used to be, isn't there? I mean, the places like the Queen's have closed, and there's
Grey Mare's an Indian now.
Yeah, there's a number of factors for that, but I think what you'll find is if there was 10,000 fans going to Boundary Park every week, there'd be pubs and bars and places popping up around the ground again, because they become viable.
I don't know what Dublin's like, Matt, but there's quite a big pop-up culture in London where street markets will suddenly just appear there, and be somebody there selling hot dogs and somebody else selling loads of street food and stuff like that, and you can generally get a beer in these places, and maybe that's the answer. You don't want any sort of permanent building and all the ties that come with that, because really you're talking about an income of once a fortnight for 3/4 of the year.
Yeah.
So it might be a place where you can, like the car park there, certainly.
I've thought that for a long time. If it
wasn't completely battered by wind, and other elements, then it might be a good space for this sort of pop-up type arrangement.
The club have been looking into getting a marquee, put up. I think Carl was talking about like behind the Rochdale Road or something.
Right, the big top.
Yeah, a tent-like structure. Yeah, but getting companies involved, like Quirky Catering, who do the catering at the ground. They also have like the Bomb and the Flying Horse in Rochdale and a few other restaurants and things.
Yeah.
But like getting someone in like that to do pop up and get like local beers in.
Yeah.
And I'd love to see the
stuff like that.
The Asian food of the area brought into it and all, being able to get curries and the really good quality. Because tell you what, you say I don't know what Dublin's like compared to Oldham and Manchester for Asian food. It's absolutely bobbins. It really is. Like one of the first meals they have when I go home. Obviously, I go to the Chippy, and because the Chippies here are crap and all, and then and get curries and kebabs, because they just don't know what they're doing here, like they do in Oldham when it comes to those kinds of foods. Yeah, but it's all down to the ethnic diversity of a place, and Oldham's rich in that. So the food is great.
Even from when I was a kid, the lads from Grange were City or United fans, mainly United. So that would be a mostly Asian school, but they definitely gravitated towards the glamour of the Manchester teams.
Yeah, and Liverpool as well.
And Liverpool, yeah. I don't want to sort of say that they all, but that was
I think there's some bigger questions there. This is the stuff that I'm really interested in, and it's about identity. It's about pride in where you're from, the town, and all that kind of stuff. And like if you don't feel sort of like maybe an Oldhamer as such primarily in your identity, maybe you feel more like a Mancunian part of the bigger local area, and you identify with those clubs as much as. And look, success on the pitch brings new fans in all the time. Oldham are doing well, then you get a much broader, more diverse mix of people following. It's just weirdos like us that stick by clubs like Oldham. I think Mike said that last week, actually. I think it was a really good point. He said, if you're an Oldham fan now, you're always going to be an Oldham fan. I thought that was a really good way of putting it.
A lot of what he said about identity really rang true with me. It was, I think he was spot on about that. I'm not taking anything away from Mike, but he was saying that he lives in West Yorkshire now, or he's a national newspaper reporter now, so he doesn't have his feelers in the club as he might have once done. And maybe that's an element of his alienation as well, because his life has just moved on from Oldham, as a lot of us do. So
he spent time in the States as well,
right?
Reporting on American sports.
Oh, they have sports over there. I didn't realise.
They're just big adverts, really.
Yep.
I think going back to the football side of things, Gareth, and what you were saying about balance, and for me, like you were saying about having good quality elite, there's no doubt we've got some of the best players that we've had for a long time in this squad, but the squad isn't balanced, and that's why it's not doing as well as it should be doing for me. What do you think, Gareth? I think there's a lack of balance in the team.
I think one of the things I wanted to talk about today was how many goals we concede. Obviously, it bothers everybody. I think we're all disappointed with the January transfer window, weren't we, where we didn't replace Rowe. We didn't sign the experienced centre-half we needed. Obviously, if we're being really greedy, we need an experienced centre midfielder, but I think Hilsner's kind of eased some of those concerns because he's a tidy player, isn't he? But I think one of the things that doesn't get mentioned, and I often get a bit of criticism on Twitter for being very pragmatic in my approach to what I want to see from a Latics team, is really that we don't defend from the front at all. So there's lots of reasons why we concede loads of goals, and it's not just because Page and Clark and whoever are rubbish defenders. I just don't think we defend from the front. I think McAlane, as much as I love him, it's great to see someone scoring loads of goals. He doesn't really press. He doesn't cover his fullback at all, and he doesn't hold it up either. Mike said that Bahambula loses the ball a lot. I could quite agree with him, but I can kind of see where he comes from. He does as great as he is, and I think he's great, isn't he? I do find him frustrating. I mean, I did say that he lacks an end product there. Someone shot me straight down and I said, actually, he's the highest assist maker in the league or something like that. So I was wrong there. But
I think you're right. Well, I don't think you were wrong, Gareth. I think what you're saying is that you would expect more of it for the amount of ball that he has.
He's got so much talent as well.
Yeah, he could be delivering. He could be scoring more goals, and he probably could be if he had maybe there was more bodies in the box at the end of what he's doing as well. Then maybe his stats could be even better. Playing McElhaney out the left, for me, he's out of position. He needs to be around the box, in and around the box. No, he can be effective from coming in from the left, but when I was talking about balance before, he doesn't cover the left back. And once our team is really narrow in the final 2/3, and we need somebody out on the left who's covering the fullback, because every single week they score goals from that side, putting crosses in. We're not stopping the crosses. We're vulnerable at crosses, yet we're not doing anything to stop it, and it's getting really annoying.
I thought that was going to be Hillsman. I thought he was coming in to be on the left.
We thought he was a winger, didn't we? And then he looked really comfortable. He looked really comfortable holding, was it Newport where we won 3-2? And then the next game, he played him higher up the pitch. And I was thinking, why? Because the obvious issue at the moment is Harry tinkers a lot, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And he messes around with a winning formula, which is really frustrating. I know you guys have spoke about it on this podcast, haven't you, in terms of why he does that. And he's tried to back it up in the press, hasn't he? And
his comments on rotation were like, well, this is what everybody does now, so I have to do it. And that's just really, really lazy, and there's no science behind that. It's like, look at your own set of players and make your own decisions on how you manage them based on what you've got and what's working and what's not working. Not, well, everybody rotates, so I have to rotate. I mean...
We're looking at the stats the stats the other day of how many players teams have used.
Steve Shipman that tweeted that, wasn't it?
Yeah. And you look at the ones that have used the fewer number of players, and they're all the ones at the top of the table.
There's so much inconsistency, minute to minute, game to game, week, month to month, that you can't say we've got a best 11. But if we have our best 11 out and we're playing a certain way, I don't know, I've flogged that 11 to death. Until such time as there's none of them left, and then you have to put in whoever.
But I don't think I think he kept. I keep saying this, but like he sold Danny Rowe. So he never tried a 4-4-2. Grant is the only proper left footer we've got. He'll run up and down and cover that fullback all day long, up down that left wing. I would stick him out on the left, Bahambula on the right, 4-4-2. Stop messing about. And that's how I would have played. Now, it might not have worked, but we never saw it, so we don't know how effective it was or not. And that's frustrating, because even though it's tinkered, it's within this very set kind of formation kind of thing, which doesn't always work.
Matt, I know Paddy spoke a lot about, speaks Paddy a lot, and he says Adams can play in the centre. I've never known him to play central before. Has he done at previous club?
For me, he's a combative player. He will get stuck in. He'll win the ball. When he gets the ball, he'll find an attacking play. He'll get the ball to Bahambula. He'll find a ball through the channel. We've lacked that person in midfield. So it doesn't matter how successful he's been in midfield. He would be the perfect player that we don't have anywhere else. And for
I'd rather have him there than right back.
Yeah, we're not getting the best out of him at right back, are we?
There's no sense of it. I'd stick. I mean, Fage, like, we know that he could potentially have a bit of a liability at the back, but I think him and Bahambula do look threatening going forward, potentially down. So let people worry about that a little bit. I think that there was potential for that with Danny Rowe of having a pretty good 4-4-2 team, but it never happened, did it? So
it's amazing to me how managers at all levels follow the fashion at the top. So everybody plays it out from the back now, from whoever's bottom of the league to whoever's top. You know, you've got to have your goalkeeper receiving a back pass and then knocking it out to the fullback or the centre half or a centre mid who's come deep. And everybody's got to do that. And I just don't understand football. If everybody's doing that, I think you see many games like throughout the leagues, internationally and whatnot, where a 4-4-2 would beat that system all day.
The only thing we go with 4-2-3-1 a lot, don't we? And that links in what you're saying, Will, about that's a typical Premiership formation a lot of the time, isn't it? Or a 4-3-3. A lot of the time we say centre mid's our weakest area on the pitch. So if we were to go 4-4-2, in my view, we'd probably get overrun. And that's my view.
Right.
A little bit light in there. We don't have a dominating centre midfielder, and Tam was as close as we got to that, and he's probably not quite up to it, if we're being honest, in terms of his distribution and his positioning.
Yeah, on his own. Definitely not on his own.
Definitely on his own. He needs someone alongside him, doesn't he, with that nous? But I mean, 4-4-2 at home, I certainly think is the way we could at least try it, and we tend not to. At the minute, we've got Granty up front by himself, who's not a centre forward, is he? I think he's got a cracking left peg and he works hard, so he should play out left. As simple as that.
Definitely. He absolutely disappeared last week against Salford. I forgot he was on the pitch.
Yeah.
Well, because all he was doing was chasing everything, and he worked so really hard. You can't fault the lad at all, but he's going to get nothing out of the game. He's just chasing.
I love it when there's a little bit of aggro, or there's a decision to swing, to sway the ref. He's in there.
Yeah,
and that's what we need. That's his experience. We don't have enough of that. We don't.
I like it. I like him. There's got a lot of. You can't fault anyone who's going to run and work and get stuck in like that. But he's played definitely out of position.
I think where I get frustrated is lads we've got with loads of ability that don't look like they're enjoying themselves that much. I'm thinking about a certain left back we've got who's clearly can play football. Doesn't really look like he's trying that hard to me and stuff. And that goal we conceded against who was it where they just sort of brushed him off the ball and went clear, and he just doesn't look like he's enjoying himself to me. Whether I'm wrong, I don't know, but he's clearly got a lot of ability. We've got plenty of lads with ability, haven't we? I don't think anyone's.
I'm not sure he does. He's got some. I mean, he's obviously got some. He's played, for United in their first team. But
it's a hell of a drop, Will, from the Premier League to the bottom end of League Two.
Yeah,
you have to question why somebody that's playing at that level doesn't drop naturally down into the Championship. You know what I mean? It's a long way to go. So there's something not right, with, because even just in terms of pay and things like that, I mean, it's taking a massive drop. So look, I'm not going to go at him. I don't know what it is, but there's something that doesn't, I mean, he's not the first. I mean, look at Whelan. He was at United, wasn't he? And then Watford, and now he's down at Latics. So. Yeah. Sometimes it happens, and then sometimes they find their way back up again. And I think sometimes we forget that footballers are young lads, aren't they? They're young lads. I mean, I was a young lad, and I was bloody all over the shop. You know what I mean? There's no way I would have been. I didn't make the most of my 20s, so I don't know why we expect the. Well, it depends what you said by making. Well, if it was going out and having a good time and not taking life seriously, then I absolutely made the most of my 20s. But if it was trying to build a career and be responsible and all that kind of stuff, what you need to do as a footballer, then I would have been no use whatsoever. Yeah. So it's a lot to ask of these young lads, and people forget that. I think
I've bumped into the Hamers, Tom Hamer's parents, in the Merlin pub in Swindon. We were talking about Alex Iacovitti, and a few of the lads were saying, "Oh, he's absolute garbage, he's rubbish," and stuff like that. They've had him round for his tea and whatnot, and they said, "Oh, he's a really nice lad, Alex," and we were like, "Oh, but we're talking about a footballer, and you're talking about a young man who's a friend of your son and a professional colleague." And it's really weird that, because suddenly I realised that he is a young man, and you should you can't be too personal about it. He's trying to make his way in the world, and you do forget that about these players sometimes. I don't know what it is with Borthwick Jackson, but United and City and Liverpool and Everton and all these clubs, Chelsea, they sweep up every youngster there is who can kick a ball straight. So not all of them are going to make it. And if you get as far as Borthwick Jackson did, then you've got something about you. Yeah,
maybe it's that whole kind of, once you realise you're not going to make it, that psychological element of it, the disappointment of it, I'm going to play for Man United, and this is my dream. And then all of a sudden, it's like, sorry, kid, you're not good enough. And some lads will handle that better than others, won't they? But never mind, son. Oldham are interested. All right.
He played 10 times for the first team, didn't he? And then he seemed to just drop down alone to like Tranmere and Scunny, didn't he? And then he found himself at Latics, yeah.
But then, like I said, there's also the personal side of things, like what's going on in someone's life.
Yeah,
that's why we can criticize people's performance, but there's the way that sometimes fans give people grief in the ground and the kind of things that they shout at them and the stuff that they put on social media, it's completely uncalled for. You don't know what's going on in someone's life. Give them a bit of slack, and you wouldn't like it if it was on the shoe was on the other foot.
I mean, when you look at the team in general, we're only saying at the start of the season that we don't have many players, any experience that from playing first team football, and they are young lads, aren't they? Even Bahambula's only 24 or something. It's his first season in England. The fact he's having an outstanding season when you break it down, really, even if he can be frustrating. I found myself sticking up for Garrity on Twitter for many of the reasons you were saying there, Matt. I mean, he's limited, isn't he? But he was 110%. And historically, that's what I always thought Latics fans wanted the most. And he gives you that, but he's probably gets the most criticism out of any of our players at the minute, I would say. With good reason. He doesn't look after the ball, absolutely not. But he never hides from it either.
You can become a scapegoat, can't you, for the general failings of the side, I think. When that's standard.
Dylan Fage is the other one, and he's a young lad with hardly any experience of playing professional football, and he just does okay. He's got some qualities, hasn't he, in terms of getting forward and things like that.
I mean, one thing that doesn't improve performance of these young lads is no, we can't do it now because we're not there, but on social if they pay attention, but like giving them loads of stick and making them feel unwanted and doesn't help them, does it? I mean, it's hard from a football because all of us are different, and some of us are more likely to give out grief and get on people's backs naturally than others, and we've all done it. Not one of us here that hasn't shouted abuse at a footballer at the football. But
I tend to shout abuse at the opposition players. If you've got long hair, you're going to be called Jesus all game.
I'm going for that Jesus look over lockdown. I've got my headphones so massive, you can't see my long hair, but it's getting pretty long. Yeah, I know, and that's all good. That's all banter. I love all that. Yeah, look, I think for me, like you said, Gareth, we've got some good players. We might creep into the playoffs this season, and if we do, and the season goes on a little bit longer, then great, happy days. I've got an eye on next season because I'm more worried about, can we evolve the squad we've got into a proper promotion pushing team next season, or is it going to fall apart, and are we going to go back to the same scenario that we have at the beginning of this season with hardly any players starting next season, potentially changing coach, because there's nothing to suggest in the past history of the owners that that's not the case. We can't expect that Kuhl's staying, and there's people that will argue that he should and people that will argue that he shouldn't. That's a different debate. But we never had a manager finish the season at Latics, have we, under the current ownership? So there's so many variables and questions going into next season. That's what I'm worried about, and that's why I can't really enjoy when it's good this season, from my point of view.
Well, first of all, I think you should give up your expectation that we're going to evolve next season. We don't evolve. We have a revolution every single summer.
Well, that's what
loads in, loads out.
And it's not a new thing. It was the same under Corney.
Yeah, it was the same under Corney. That's not... And I think the picture is pretty similar at a lot of clubs these days in League 2, League 1, particularly at the lower end. Your good players get picked off and you have short-term contracts because cash is so scarce. So evolution within a season, I think, is the best you can expect. And I'm not sure whether we have evolved. I think we were evolving, and then we got rid of Danny Rowe. And that was that for me. I don't have massive expectations. I would love us. Honestly, I'm going to hire an open-top bus if we get top half this season.
Matt, a big theme of the podcast, hasn't it, has been around, can we tie our better players down to a contract next season? And even pre-COVID in years gone by, we've never been good at that, have we? No. And I think it's such a shame we're not going to be able to do it this year, because there is a few players in there we'd like to keep on next season. Your McElhaney's, your Bahambulas. Is Bahambula out of contract at the end of the season?
I think we've got an option.
An option, yeah.
This opens up a very serious question. How do we evolve? So what you're saying there, Will, is unless we make the playoffs this season, unless we go up this season, evolution of this current setup is not possible, because Kuhl himself said that a manager needs 3 years. He needs 3 years if he's able to keep the best players that he's got each time and add to his squad and develop his squad. Otherwise, it's just like Groundhog Day. Each year repeats itself, and it's a stroke of luck, if anything.
And no manager in the lower leagues has actually conquered this problem yet. Where you've got one of these clubs, and there are a number of clubs. Grimsby Town do it, Scunthorpe do it. where you've got everybody on short-term contracts because you can't really look further ahead than that money-wise. You can't really evolve. And if you have a manager there for 3 years and he's got 24 times 3 different players coming in, so 60, 72 different players, no manager has actually managed to do that, has themselves evolved enough to take that last group of 24 up or anywhere.
But it doesn't have to be changing the full lot. You should be looking to keep a core of decent players.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at Danny Rowe. We really should have been looking to keep him on, regardless of his age or anything. He was a class footballer, and you want to keep him on. So we should have been looking to extend his contract rather than...
The frustration, Will, just imagine, Danny Rowe, Nicky Adams, David Wheater, spiny team. Everyone, we're always talking about spiny team. Look, and it's the frustration of the players that have come and gone over these years. And it's like, never mind there's players that have come over the last. I don't even know. If I walk past them in the street, I have no idea who they were. You tell me the name, because I'm not one of these people who remembers everyone who's ever put on a Latics shirt. I've forgotten most of them because they weren't worth remembering. They come and they go. But if you look at those players that we've had over the last few years, Peter Clark, the list goes on, right? Jack Byrne, they've all left for non-footballing reasons. And obviously the inconsistencies with the manager or the head coach has contributed to these things. And that's the frustration. We've had the managers, we've had the players, and then we've got...
You've said it yourself, Matt, recently, that the frustrating thing is the model, and it comes back to the root problem, doesn't it, of how we're run, because...
Yeah.
Are we the only club in this league that has this model in terms of a head coach and a sporting director? We're probably not, but I think you said it, Matt, that it just needs a manager that knows the level. And Harry doesn't know. Well, he's worked at this level before, but nothing about him suggests that he knows this level properly in terms of the way he sets out his teams up and things. Because you need. I mean, Tranmere is a classic example of when they're rocked up at Boundary Park. Cheltenham the other night. That is what you need at this level for me. You need a bit of steel about you. It's massively frustrating because it's not rocket science to get out of this league. And
look at the players, look at the managers, that we've had over the years that players would walk over coals for. And this is what you're saying, Will, about this consistent. But you get a proper manager in who knows how to manage, who knows how to get players on side. That way with Joe Royal, his team would have walked over coals from him. And we listened to the Chaddy Enders podcast with Andy Ritchie talking about how Joe managed them. They were a bit of a lively bunch, but Joe knew how to handle them and how to ensure that they bonded as a group of players. And look at Shez and the relationship that he had with his players and how he managed to players coming in and saying, I'm signing for the club, but I'm not just signing for the club, I'm signing for the manager. And I'm confident that over the next 2 years, he'll get us out of the division. I'm signing into League Two now. If I trust this manager to sign the right players to build a squad, and we'll be out of here in a couple of years. And if people buy into that, someone like Danny Rose come in, fancies his chances at Bradford more than he does here.
Yeah,
Bradford below us in the league today. They lost again today, and that's the problem because they've not got anyone to latch their faith onto. We've listened to the interview with Pete Wild on the Sheepfoot Lane podcast this week, and similar kind of things talking again about and Jose Bagster on the Chaddy Enders. The reason players aren't coming in and sticking to the manager and the vision it's nothing to do with the coaches. It's what's going on above the coaches. The problems are there, the issues are there, and they're not just about the manager and the players on the pitch. And that's why we've not played today. We could have come on here and talked about anything. We always end up coming back to what the overriding issues at the club are.
Every time we watch Oldham play, we are actually watching a drama going on between players, head coach, sporting director, chairman, health and safety officer. That's what we're really watching. And those people need to get out of that team, out of the dressing room, out of team affairs. It's as simple as that. Football has never worked with those people in charge.
One man in charge of the football.
Yeah,
the manager.
Yeah,
he goes to the chairman. Can I sign such and such? Can I have some money? Yes, no, whatever. He has a network of scouts that report to him. And that's how it works. And
nothing happens at the football club without that man knowing about it.
No. And that's the way it works. That's the way it should work. But like we said before about Harry Kuehl wanting to do what's fashionable. Clubs and owners want to do what's fashionable. You don't get anywhere by following a fashion. You get somewhere by doing what's right for you and what's right for those around you. And being brave enough to be yourself.
It's very difficult to watch for that reason, because after the rumours that went around after Northampton, and some people weren't getting paid, and that's why they didn't start the game, and all this sort of stuff, and we got relegated, and that was a disgrace. It was horrible.
Yep.
And you see that how the intervention works from above, from Abdallah and from Mo, where they get involved in stuff, and how they fall out with people here, there, and everywhere. What's wrong with them? Sooner or later, you have to ask, what's wrong with them?
And that's the thing.
Why do they have this habit of falling out with people all the time?
Yeah, and there's no like concrete evidence. Everyone says, "Oh, where's the evidence and where's this?" But it's happened every year.
There's a weight of circumstantial evidence.
There's no smoke without fire. It happens.
Well, we've heard it from people who've been there.
Absolutely.
I mean, what more do you need?
Now,
if this was a court of law and you've got enough witnesses coming in saying virtually the same thing on different occasions, they've witnessed X, Y, and Z, then it all mounts up to enough evidence, doesn't it?
Oh, but they've all got an agenda. They've all been released by the club. They've all got something bad to say about the club because
every single one of them. When you add them all up together, when you get to the 15th, and you're still saying, "Oh, they've got a personal agenda against the club." That's rubbish.
Like Mike was saying last week, though, wasn't it, about Wildy, and it was summed up nicely in the Oldham Times this week. And it was his dream job, and he probably shouldn't have been in that job in terms of his experience in our job. He didn't want to stick around because, like he said, he had to look after his reputation if he was trying to build one.
And what he said in that interview was, I was not being given the opportunity to do what I wanted. I couldn't keep the players I wanted. I was having to... He even mentioned players like Sonny Seffel and players like that. You want to replace Peter Clark with Sonny Seffel. Well, I'm not hanging around to take the flak for that. I'm gone. And you totally can understand that. Yeah. I think in terms, going back to the question of evolution, it has to happen at the structure of the club. The evolution that we need is more being removed from the sporting director role and a full-time manager being given the opportunity to build a team and a squad to get us out of this division. And how long
could all work? It could all work through a sporting director, if that's the man who's going to carry the identity of the football side and the football club in general. Then that's fine. But it's not Mo Lemsagam, I'll tell you now.
Do you see that ever changing?
Not that man. He will never be that man.
As long as he's there and his brother owns a club, do you ever see that changing?
No, but all we can do is keep referring to the fact it's not working until it works. Now, if it starts to work in the next 12 months, then all well and good. I don't think it will. If we get into the playoffs this season, they'll probably say, well, it's working. And you'd have to say, well, there is some progress there. But then if we go on to next season and we see what happens there, if we win the league, then okay, there's progress. Do you know what I mean? But until those things happen, it doesn't appear that it's going to be the solution, or that it is the solution to taking this club forward. Unfortunately,
we changed our transfer kind of policy a little bit in the summer, didn't we? In terms of more domestic-based players, I suppose. But again, none of them had played any first-team football before, had they? Or very few of them had. So I got kind of a little bit excited for a little bit, but it hasn't obviously panned out too well. But I noticed that we've fallen 8 points behind the playoffs today, which psychologically feels a lot more than the 6 that was at 3 o'clock today. So they do, they're a long way off, aren't they?
Have we made progress, Gareth, this season on last season, do you think?
I think no. I suppose we have. If we finish 13th, we have, but it's not enough for us, is it? We want a lot more than that. I think a lot of fans, including me, are still struggling to come to terms with being in League Two. I think I fell out with Wellens after Northampton, and then with hindsight, I was a bit harsh to do that. I think obviously we know there was miles more to that, and what should have happened is that Wellens should have got the next season. But that's in an ideal world with people who know what they're doing in charge. But no, in answer to your question, Matt, we probably have made some progress, but not enough. Absolutely not. We should be higher up the league, and we haven't recruited in the areas that we needed to. We signed that young lad from Peterborough. He wasn't in the squad today, I believe. We don't need him. He's very good, but he's not what we needed. I'm sure he's very good. Sorry, I'm sure he's a talented lad. But
what we didn't need, Gareth, is a 7th loan. when we
No,
can't.
no.
And that kind of contradicts what Abdallah said about relying on loan players as well. We've now got 7 in the squad, 2 of which are come a match day are redundant. So it's these kind of things, isn't it, that you're not signing players in the positions that we need them, not putting David Wheater back in the team when we desperately need him. These are the kind of things that we're just looking at and going, what the what's going on?
We will all look at this. We're not going up this season. I mean, forget it. You know, I don't know. I always think that we're going to make the playoffs. You know, I always look at the playoffs and
you have to believe, though,
we're going to do it
to get through the season.
Mathematically impossible. I'm always looking at the table for that.
We go back to those extremes we were talking about at the start of this. Where's the balance, lads?
There has to be a nugget inside you, no matter how much your brain is and all your logic is telling you. You have to just hope. Every time you tune into a game, something's going to, because that's until, like you said, until it's completely impossible. Look, before we wrap it up, lads, I wanted to just mention to Will, because Will Goff, you're from Push the Boundary, and there has been something of significance off the field this week in light of the Panorama documentary. Push the Boundary released a statement. So I don't want to step in any legal hot water. You've obviously thought through all this. Okay, but you have released a statement. So can you just tell us about the statement that you've released and what it was in relation to this week?
Well, after the documentary, was it Monday night it was on? Obviously, there were a few people putting a few things together and done a bit of research with things that have gone on with Adam Morley. And obviously, he has connections via Brand Smiths, his law firm, and via S-Jam, his boxing management company, I think it is.
And Adam Morley is on the board of directors at Latics, just for anyone listening who's not 100% sure.
Yeah, so, and there were people raising concerns about any connections with him and the crime family of the Kinahans. So,
crime family.
Alleged.
They're alleged, yeah. They're in Dublin. They're basically they're at Dublin, and it's a well-known name here on the front pages of the papers. So
So people have contacted us and raised concerns about it all. So obviously,
so the BBC have gone. I didn't see the Panorama program, right? So this probably helps in terms of like any legal hazard. So one of the boxing firms who's implicated with connections with this Daniel Kinahan bloke, we share a lawyer. Oldham Athletics share a lawyer with him. Is that right? With MTK. Is that right?
Yeah. So Brand Smiths have been engaged with some. I think it's with some defamation and some character issues. But it's MTK, boxing management company, who hire Brand Smiths. So it's not that they're hiring Adam. And MTK, apparently Daniel Kinahan doesn't have anything to do with MTK anymore. So this is what they've told us.
What we're not suggesting that there's any impropriety, any wrongdoing between anybody here. What we're saying is there is a connection. There's just a connection between Adam Morley and this wider documentary.
There's a friend of a friend. Somebody was in a documentary, and then somebody. It's
a name that connects Oldham Athletic with this story.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. And so what you wanted to do, Will, was go to the club and you asked Carl about it, didn't you? And Carl came back with a statement and basically just said that there's nothing other than this legal reputation, shared legal representation, and everything's fine. There's nothing.
And I mean, we sent it to Carl, obviously, as a concern from the fan base. Responded really quickly, but it's not just Carl responding as well. It's Adam who responded himself.
Yeah.
All right. What did Adam say?
Via Carl. He just basically what I've been saying about his firm are employed by MTK or were employed by MTK, and the S-Jam have connections with MTK as well, along with very many other reputable companies like ESPN and Sky. etc.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah.
But nothing gets past anyone, does it? Nothing gets past anyone. People watching these things are picking up on the names and what's what. And I think, Push the Boundary were on the ball. You lads were out with a statement about it before anybody else. And I just wondered do you think that it was Push the Boundary to do that? Do you think that the club should have put something out themselves prior, or maybe the trust should have been questioned? Or is it just a case that Push the Boundary are just on it What's the story? And what do you think, lads? Do you think that it should the club have sort of like just preempted that there might be this link and that people might have questions and that they should have maybe put something out themselves? And I know that the club have been really cooperative and with you, and you've got to give them credit for that. But I'm just saying maybe they could have preempted that and actually come out themselves and said something.
Can I stick up for the club here? Right, I don't think they should be preemptive about that because it's like a politician coming out and saying, "I did not shag a pig. I did not do that," and then everyone's like, "Nobody said you did." But what's this all about? Why are you saying he didn't?
I'm just asking a question that I know people are thinking, so it just kind of helps.
I think it is up to push the boundary. I think if you want to be a representative fans group, then you've got to be alive to those questions all the time. We all know that the ownership of Oldham Athletic is a problem because we're not going anywhere or doing anything, so it's in everyone's focus. We know that the owners interfere with team affairs, so there's not a lot of love for them out there.
I'm glad you didn't say pigs then, Will. Should have been to trust Oldham as opposed to push the boundary to get in there first? I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here and just respond.
I mean, I'd butt in here and say that, people have contacted us and we've acted
responded
on that
accordingly. Yeah.
So, whether anyone contacted the trust and raised it with them, I don't know. But do
the trust need to be contacted about it, or should that be on their radar? Anyway, maybe they didn't watch Panorama between them. I don't know.
I think,
and my point is, who's looking out for the interests? Not that as we've stated already very clearly, there's nothing to suggest that there's any wrongdoing, but the trust's job is to be the eyes that guard, watch over Oldham Athletic on behalf of the long-term sustainability of the. And if there's any issue whatsoever, they should be the first people to spot it, or the first people that people go to with that information.
In theory, they should, yeah. But push the boundary to me are our voice now, and that's what the trust were set up to do, weren't they? And they've not delivered on that, at least not for a long time. And Will, Steve, and the rest of the guys do a much better job, in my opinion, in terms of representing the fans and holding the owners to account as well in the club. But yeah, I'm not really I only just saw this briefly, so I've not been able to contribute to this particular, lads. But
there's nothing to talk about really, insofar as it's not really a story. It's more of just an observation of this connection, and that's it. There's, like I said, there's no allegations of wrongdoing or anything like that. But it's just more about this kind of this bigger picture thing again about safeguarding the club and looking out for potential issues and responding accordingly as a voice to the fans. I think that's the question.
And it might be that they did, and they have raised it internally, or that they were in the middle of doing it, but we were too quick to do it. I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's any harm in having lots of people keeping an eye out for the club and the best interests.
Definitely not. And I think nowadays, like where we are now at the minute, we are vigilant. And there's a lot of people who care about the club and who are paying attention, and things are different now. And maybe in the past, people just kind of left it up to Trust Oldham and left it up to a number of people, and it was a big responsibility and it was hard work. You've been involved in the Trust, Will, over the years. Maybe now that we're all taking a bit more, not all of us, but there's a lot more of us feeling that we have to get involved and say our piece and are actually genuinely afraid for the future of the club. That's a good thing. And what Push the Boundary have very successfully been able to do is articulate that between the relevant parties. And if people are coming to you lads first, then that's just a compliment to you guys and a measure of your success so far. So I know that the Trust say that they want to work with you. So we'll see how all that relationship develops, and we'll see. The Trust are definitely going to be coming back on this podcast at some point soon, I hope. And I just want these conversations to be public so that we can all listen to them and we can all contribute to them.
I've been involved very, very in a very, very limited way with the Trust in the past. And as Mike Keegan said last week, there's an inherent conflict between being in the boardroom and representing fans. There's a conflict. And the Trust has never shaken that off. Personally, I know Jay Flynn, is he in charge of the Trust now?
He's the chair now,
yeah. And he's a good guy, and he's a good guy, and he's a very serious guy. Whereas some past post holders have not been serious, such as Barry Owen. And I don't want to bash the trust and say that they should be into this and into that, because when the questions being asked are this serious, they've got to come down in a position. Are they the 3% shareholder board member, or are they the 3% shareholder fan representative? Barry never squared that circle. He always sided with the club. And in that, he was consistent. They're going to have to compromise more than anyone wants them to. Lemzagan will say to them, are you in this or not? And they've got to say yes.
Again, come back to that point of evolution. I think we're just at that point where the trust is crucially needs to evolve into something else, into something more effective. And the way, like when I had Paul and Jason on this podcast, they use the term critical friend. They're a critical friend of the club. I see Push the Boundary as a critical friend of the trust. And, they're relaying what the wider fan base thinks to them, and I think that's a really important relationship. And if they embrace that, then that'll help them to build the type of trust that maybe fans want. But there's a lot of conversations to have, and we're having them every week, and that's why we're here. It does slip away from the football side of things, and you know what? When we're sixth in the Championship, in the playoff mix for that coveted Premier League spot, then we'll have no need to talk about all this, will we?
At that point, Will be chairman and Gaz will be sporting director.
Yeah.
And podcasts won't exist that far in the future.
No.
Pete Wild will be the manager, and they'll already be a statue.
Me and you'll just be alcoholics just outside eating onion barges at the market at the back of the Rochdale Road end. The second section of this week's podcast is a conversation I recorded with the hosts of two other Oldham podcasts, Walking Down Sheepfoot Lane and the Chaddy Enders. I referred earlier to interviews I'd listened to on these shows, and it's all part of an exciting network of content that fans are putting out, creating a conversation, nostalgic reflection and debate about the club that we all love. A few weeks ago, I invited the lads from both to join me for a chat so I could find out more behind their motivations for putting out their podcasts and to get to know them a little bit better. Nice to have you all here anyway.
Yeah, you're welcome.
See you all. Your podcast and my podcast have been just kind of, trundling along, doing our own little thing. And then someone would message me then, there's another podcast coming out now. And it's like, bloody hell, I can't move for podcasts all of a sudden, Latics podcast. And so I was thinking about it for a while. And then I saw that tweet and I thought it'd be a good opportunity. Let's just all have a natter, because we're all Latics fans at the end of the day. We're all doing something which is similar but different. I'm sure if some of us have an audience already, I'm sure that those people will be interested in what the other people are doing. Maybe people have listened to my podcast and not listened to yours yet. Obviously, like if people that are listening to this have probably already listened to my podcast, the Boundary Park Alert System, which is I've done 17 weeks now, and I've done a few bonus episodes along the way, so they're probably familiar with that. And I've also got Binman and Bradley from Walking Down Sheepfoot Lane.
Yeah.
Welcome, lads.
You're right there, too.
Hi.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. How long have you been doing your podcast for now?
I say about 3 months, would you say, Brad? 3, 4 months?
22nd of September, our first one was.
Yeah. It was. I think it was just a week or so after mine came out, just after the start of the season, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And then towards the end of January, we've got another podcast, Latics podcast, the Chaddy Enders, hosted by Brody. All right, Brody.
How are we doing? We all right?
Yeah. Has this been brewing in the background for a while, this podcast, has it?
Yeah, I kind of, wanted it, but like I've listened to both your podcasts, and I listened to the one that Brookie and Billy did when that was going, when Revolution was going and what have you. And I just kind of thought, you know what? You guys do, you analyse the games and you look at what's going on at the club now. I'm a little bit out of touch with that. I mean, I'm the same as everyone else. I'm watching games on iFollow, and I kind of looked at it and thought I wanted to do something, but there was absolutely no point in trying to do something that you guys are doing, or similar in any way. And I kind of looked and thought, right, well, what could I do? And I thought, well, I used to work at the club. I've been involved with the club sort of in various different ways for 20 odd years. So I must be able to do something with people that I've got to know and met across the way that is different. That's kind of just speaking to them one-on-one to talk about their time at the club. And trying to sort of get some stories out of people as to what it's really like behind the scenes at the club, and sort of people they've been involved with and characters along the way, and like their favourite players, best players, and that sort of thing. So yeah, fortunately, quite a few people have said yes to doing it, and I've started recording a couple of episodes this week. So no, it's been good so far.
I had this discussion with Bradley the other day about obviously on ours, because obviously, Brody, you've been involved with the club before. Obviously, we can go a bit further than what you think. If that makes sense, we can go a bit further than what's being said on the current situation and the past situations that we've had, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, 100%. There are, it's no great secret that over the course of the last few years, a lot of people, be it players, be it staff, have left the club. And a lot have left under controversial circumstances, or not much has come out about why they've left. And I can say now that quite a lot of those people have signed stuff to say that they can't and won't talk about it. And I know that one of the frustrations that a lot of Oldham fans have is that no one will actively come out, perhaps with the exception that Anthony Gerrard did a couple of things, that won't come out and really say what they think about what's been happening. And that's been a massive frustration for a lot of people that kind of want to know what's going on. And you guys are all in a way better position to get in there and get stuck in and ask questions than I am on it. Absolutely. So yeah, totally get that you can go further on it.
I dallied in a podcast back in 2018, and I put it out on SoundCloud, and I didn't really know what I was doing. And I did a few episodes of it. And then after that, the All Things Latics one kicked off. And, it was good to listen to, because any Latics content is good, because you don't get it on mainstream media, through mainstream media channels, do you? And Cron's gone, and there was a bit of a void, wasn't there? But what I was a bit frustrated about by that podcast was there was a lot of things going on at the club that weren't really being tackled properly. There was a little bit too much restraint in that podcast about going the extra mile and really saying it as it was and calling it as it was. And I understand why that was. That's not a criticism of the people that produced the podcast. I understand why they were kind of holding back a bit in terms of who they were with and the organisations they were representing and all that kind of stuff. So I get that. But as a fan, I found it just lacking a little bit of meat on the bones. Do you know what I mean? So that's why I started what I was doing. It was like, well, I can say what, like you were saying, Bin Man, about you and Brad, is you can say what you want. And I think fans need to hear it, don't they? They want to know that other people share their kind of pain and frustration and whatnot. And I'd certainly not, I never want to actually go so far as to actually really slag people off or give them too much grief personally. But you just say it as it is, I think, is really important, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. That's what, me and Brad have always said. We were, when we first started this podcast, didn't we, Brad? We wanted it to be like a pub, didn't we?
Yeah, that's all our feedback, which we get from everybody, said that it's like a pub environment. It sounds like you sat there with a pint in your hand. And at the start...
That's what we all want at the minute, Brad.
Yeah, definitely. I think, as you said at the start, I think the first 4 or 5... We had some former staff on, some couldn't say good fully, so they're definitely out of the game, was kind of negative towards the club. But obviously, the club at the moment is quite stable at the moment, and obviously we look a bit positive. We look at going forward. So we always say to each other, don't we, Bin Man, that we just say how it is.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, that's the best way we can describe it, Brad. I repeat, we're all, end it there, we're all in the same boat. We're all Oldham fans. We all want the same thing. Yeah. We all want success. We don't want to be coming on these podcasts and be negative. But over the last couple of years, how can you be positive with what's been going on? You know what I mean?
Totally. I mean, when we started this season, the way we did, things were happening all over again, weren't they? And we knew why we'd started so badly. It was because of what had happened. And the first 10 games, we were hopeless, and obviously that was reflected. And then you start bringing in the other off-field issues as to why you've got such problems on the pitch. But then as things improve, and things have improved, we're certainly away from home, and we've got enough points on the board, then obviously the tone sort of changes a little bit, doesn't it? And then you can't just be slagging everybody off, and, you have to go with that. But I think at the time I wanted to sort of focus on what's actually happening and why it's actually happening, and looking forward and what we can do going forward. And part of what I've wanted to is not necessarily look back so much, but it's going to be broader in here a bit, because I think that's what you're doing. But there's definitely a place for that as well, because that's interesting, and we want to relive those memories, don't we?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. We've got a great history, and it's all about doing something different. I mean, so this afternoon, I've recorded an episode with Sean Jarvis, and he talks at great length about how close we actually came to going out of business under Chris Moore, and stuff like that is interesting. And fans, people that sort of have an association with the club and care about the club, it's completely different content. People will want to listen to that, but in a different way to wanting to look back at, say, whatever the game is, Saturday or a Tuesday night, and then look back and say, comment on the performance and on what we're currently doing and what the ambitions are for this season. So I think they're different things with, but kind of room for all. I would completely agree that, if I was rocking up doing a podcast that spent the first few minutes talking about Saturday's game and then things like who we should be picking this week, and then it's just saturation, and there's no need for it. It's then just kind of doing it for the sake of it. But it is about doing something a little bit different. And looking back at I think the most recent guest that I've got confirmed is in terms of when he played for the club was Jose. So Jose has played under ownership. So I'm sure that Jose will have his opinions on the club, and he's probably the best placed of everyone because he's been a player at the club within the last couple of years. So he'll be in the best position really to talk about how it's kind of changed, because he then played for the club back under the previous regime. So he's sort of been away and come back. So he's seen it under different ownership. So things like that, it's not a comment on where the club is now and whether we're heading in the right direction and, who we should be bringing in January, but more of a kind of look back over the last few years at people's stories about being involved there.
I think what we can do sort of all between us, I mean, people are going to prefer different things from a listener's point of view. People prefer one podcaster over another for whatever reason. Some people will listen to them all, and some people might listen to one or two. But what it helps people do is build up a picture, I think, because you've got different views, different opinions, different stories. It helps you build up a picture of what's happened over the last however many years, because we talk about now, we talk about the future, but we're also talking about the past. And I think that's really good because it helps fans understand why we are where we are, how we've got to where we've got to. And then I think crucially, which is one of the things that I'm really passionate about on my podcast, is what we're going to do about it in the future as fans. And I think that podcasts and what we're all doing as fans, all three of us, is showing our passion for the club, showing that we have a voice, we can use it, and using that voice, we can grow a community. And we can all influence that community. And I think going forward over the next 5-10 years, even the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it's really exciting. I don't think we've ever been in a position like this before, have we? Where we can reach out and communicate through social media, through podcasts, to such a wide range of fans, organise ourselves, and step in as and when the club needs us. And I'm buzzing about it. I mean, I think it's fantastic.
No, I agree. When Brad thought of this idea of doing it in August, September time last year, I jumped at the chance to do it. Brad come up with the idea, didn't you, brothers?
Yeah, well, we talked about it before, didn't we? Because obviously we have quite a wide network of fans. We do go to a lot of home and away games, and we do speak to quite a lot of fans. And obviously people always recognise yourself, man, and me off social media from from ranting and Twitter and stuff like that. So yeah, we just thought, well, we've got to get people on. It's people going through a dark time at the moment with the club and stuff. Obviously, the pandemic, you can't meet, so we thought it'd be best to speak like we said before, like we was in a pub and have that environment where you can just chill and just listen to views on Latics.
The situation we're in now with modern technology is totally different than has ever been before. And I think that if the club does go into crisis, we're in a much better position to get and organise ourselves. And that's why I've had the trust on. I've had Push the Boundary on. I've had Carl Evans on. I've been talking to Carl. I've had Kieran Maguire, the football economist, on. I've spoken to Bury fans, Stockport fans, Leyton Orient fans about what's happened at the club. And so just trying to sort of like preempt. I think, like you said, Brad, before, the club seems stable at the minute, doesn't it? It appears that way. But I think it's volatile, isn't it? With the way that with COVID and the economy and all this kind of stuff and what we've got to go on in the past. Yeah, I'd say things are quiet rather than stable. But you never know what's round the corner. I think we need to be in a state of readiness. And that's just being realistic, I think. That's my view. I think what we could do going forward is different to the model that the club has been run under in the past.
I would think that, with the emergence of Push the Boundary as well, in terms of a vehicle to get fans' views together, get them across to the club. Now, ultimately, if you own a football club and you pay the bills, you have a right to choose whether you listen or don't listen, or engage or don't engage. But all we can do as a whole in terms of group of fans is make feelings known. And things have been quiet for a while, which is a good thing.
As I said, at the moment we are making a little bit of progress. We've not had anything apart other than we've had no piss piles since September, and every month it was under corner. You knew when it was coming into January. Before January, December, November, the wages weren't paid. We had to rely on the FA Cup. We had to rely on the money from the EFL when it came in January. So it makes it well for the first time in a long time that we've not had any problems for, you say, half a year maybe. You just want that to continue. We don't want to be talking about the after-field stuff. We want to be on the field stuff.
Yeah, I think the apathy that has really killed us kicked in a long time ago in terms of the fans. I think as fans we should have been a lot more vociferous and a lot more vocal and angry and kicking off way before we did in terms of the way the club were being run and accepting what we were accepting. We accepted 17th in League One year after year after year after year. And all that happened is we just got depressed and left. And just left the club, abandoned the club, when what we should have been doing were banging on the doors at Boundary Park demanding change and banging on the trust door and saying what we're going to do about this and raising money and being proactive. And finally, I think that's starting to kick in. And unfortunately for the new owner, he's kind of, I think, he has made his own mistakes, but he's bearing the brunt of all that pent-up frustration under Corney as well, I think.
Yeah, I think, Brody only knows, what the club were like under Corney. Would you say it's a lot worse now, Brody, than was under Corney? And I'm not, having a go at anyone that were there when you were there.
It's hard to say. And the reason it's hard to say is that the last time I did any work with the club was pretty much exactly 2 years ago. The last time I did anything was I was doing some commercial work for the club up until the week after the Fulham game. Which is obviously 2 years ago. So it's very difficult to comment on what it's like now. Certainly, things weren't perfect under Corney by any stretch. Everyone knows that. And yeah, it's very, a lot of times it was very similar. So you would still, when I was there a couple of years ago, you'd still have people ringing, wanting that bills hadn't been paid and players weren't being paid, which was fairly publicly known we went sort of 4 or 5 months a couple of years ago. I think that the Fulham game helped us absolutely massively. It was big for us for the gate money, for the being on, we were one of the featured Sunday games, so whilst it wasn't live, it was on TV. The prize money for going through, combined with the EFL money that comes in every January, that massively helped. It would be unfair of me to say what about the club now, because I haven't worked there for a good 2 years. I know a couple of people that do, and I know that wages are being paid on time. I think that a lot of the stuff that's happened in the last few months, you talk about the club being more stable in the last few months, the owners haven't been there for a while. It's only recently, I think, sort of the last 10 days, 2 weeks that Mo's come back. And I think it's a lot of it that some of the staff have actually been allowed to do their jobs. When you own a football club, like when you own any business, you are entitled to want it running the way that you want it running. And if you're paying the bills and you're putting the money in, that's your right. But certainly a lot of staff turnover since the new owners have come in have been because of people that have perhaps argued against. It's like anything. If you argue with the owner of a club or any business, there's only going to be one winner, isn't there?
I've been there a few times, mate.
Yeah, there you go. If you argue with someone, right, whether you're right or you're wrong, if you argue with someone that owns the business and pays your wages, then there's only ever going to be one winner there. And I think that accounted for a lot of the staff turnover. I've honestly got no insight as to what it's like working at the club now, but it can't have fundamentally changed too much because we are a club with, as Matt said, we're a club with low crowds, low income, that are, like a lot of clubs in League One and League Two, living hand to mouth because of COVID.
The positive out of all of it is we're still a great club with great potential, with great fans, and our day will come again. It definitely will come again. And I think that's Abdallah and Mo must have seen some of that in the club, must have seen some of that potential and wanted to tap into it. I think they would probably argue if they were here, and I will invite them on to the podcast to come and talk, whether they will or not, I don't know. But you would argue that any time you took on a new business and you were going through a transition period, it was always going to be difficult. No doubt it has been difficult for them. They would argue that the staff that were in the club when they took over, the club wasn't doing well, so they'd be justified for turning over the staff. Then they bring their own guys in, maybe that doesn't work. So there's always going to be a bedding down period. How long does that last? 2, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? That's the thing, isn't it? How long are we patient with them? So, like you've said, Bradley, things maybe are settling down a little bit now. Maybe they've got their people in and they're happy with the teams that they've assembled, and maybe the club is going in the right direction. But we're just going to have to wait and see, aren't we? And we'll all be there at our microphones, ready to pass comment when it comes. That's what we're here for. That's what people tune in for. That's what people want to listen to. That's what people want to talk about, because we all care. We're all dead passionate about it.
That's it. You got people on here that every guy we've had on that's come on, generally likes Oldham Athletic. They love Oldham. They just want the best for the town, the club. I just think, like Brad said, it's a hope that kills you, isn't it, Brad? It is a hope that kills you. And, you desperately want success, and when nothing comes, it's heartbreaking. It is, and we've had absolutely nothing now for 30 years apart from odd cup runs, FA Cup wins. Well, that's not success in my opinion, because we never won the cup.
No,
I'm not saying they weren't great days and they're great upsets, but
But they're so few and far between, aren't they? That when they come, they're hyped and they're massive. When really they shouldn't be so amazing, because there should be more of them. But I think for me, it's like when you live away from a place and all. I've lived away from Oldham for quite a long time now, but it never leaves you. It never leaves me out. Like when I love going back. Love the people of Oldham. The people of Oldham are sound. They're so nice. They're so friendly. I love visiting Oldham, and the success of the football club will have such a massive effect on the town. It's so important. It's not just about football. It's not about points on the board. It's about the buzz, the feel-good factor, everything about the town. And I want that for the town, and that's why I want the football club to do well, because the town needs it. The people need it. It's massively important.
Well, you saw going back to when we were playing like Liverpool and Everton and the cup run back then, the buzz around the town was ridiculous at the time. People, we would get so many. I was lucky enough to be involved at the time, and the amount of requests that we got from people just went through the roof, because with the way, sort of, you can talk for ages about the decline of Oldham as a town centre and what that currently looks like, but a successful football club in a town like Oldham, or any of the northern towns that we're all really familiar with, they become the biggest brand in the town. There is nothing bigger to put a struggling town on the map than a successful football club.
Brody, it was massive news when they beat Liverpool over here in Ireland. Massive.
It was unbelievable. That it's people that we all knew, wherever they were in the world, were watching that game and were sending messages. It was crazy. And I mean, all right, a lot of that was because it's Liverpool and they have a global appeal. But even going to Fulham and winning there, the sort of thing that makes for a town is it makes the town as a whole a bit better, a bit more glamorous, a bit more people will stand up and take note a little bit. You can't underestimate the impact of a successful football club on a town that has been struggling for the last 10 years as a whole.
The conversations I've had, not so much recently, but when I first started coming over to Ireland, which is now like 17 years ago, the conversations I had with taxi drivers, an Irish taxi driver's knowledge of lower league English football is absolutely brilliant. But the conversations you'd have about, where are you from? Oldham. And then all the way, you'd be 20 minutes, half an hour in the taxi, you'd be chatting about Oldham and about the 90s and all that kind of stuff, because it puts you on the map. And we still are in people's conscience of a certain vintage, people our age and above. But younger people are like, who? And we need to get back to that point where people know who Oldham is. And we've no divine right to get there. It's going to take a lot of hard work. And it takes people like us banging the drum, putting out podcasts, drawing attention to the club, building a community. Because one of the things I've enjoyed most about the thing I've enjoyed most about doing this podcast is sitting down and having chats with people like you, meeting people for the first time, making friends. It's been fantastic, especially for somebody who's an Oldham exile out here in Ireland. I can't wait to get back over. For the amount of pints I'm going to be having with people. It's just fantastic. I can't wait, honestly. And one of the things I want to use the podcast for going forward is as a social thing. I'm going to put on events and all that kind of stuff based on the podcast, because that's what it's all about. And the stronger we can all be as a group, the more of us are feeling like mates and meeting up at matches, standing next to our new buddies, singing the songs, getting behind the team. It's all going to knit together, and we'll be 17th in League One before you know it, lads.
17th in League One's a pipe dream right now.
Well, me and Brad recorded with Guy Branston in late last year, didn't we, Brad?
We did.
And I've got his number now. We speak quite regularly. He's coming on this show, what me and Brad did. And when this COVID's over, he's coming down and meeting us for a night out.
He's a good lad. You'll like Guy. He's a top lad. He's a top lad, Guy Branston.
You know, I can't wait to meet him.
That's what it's all about, isn't it? That's what it's all about. I mean, we're so fortunate now with the technology available that we can do this. We can during a lockdown, you can make more friends during a lockdown than you would have done if you were just out and about. And it's fantastic, and I've loved it. And I hope that all our podcasts carry on, do well. You know, we all enjoy ourselves. We build our audiences, and I wish you all the best, Brody, for your podcast, mate.
Cheers.
I hope it goes well. And lads, I hope you carry on enjoying doing what you're doing, and you meet plenty of big, tough centre halves for pints down the pub once caught. Like, no one's going to be messing with you, are they? When you got a guy Branston drinking with you, you'd be right. Like,
he's our bodyguard for that. Anyone that don't like the podcast, well, they got Guy Branston to deal with.
Fantastic. Yeah, I might come and stand with you, lads, I think.
Brilliant.
The Boundary Park Alert System is a Studio 6 production. It's hosted, edited and mixed by me, Matt Dean, and you can contact me on Twitter at DublinOAFC. If you'd like to get in touch with us or contribute to the show, our email is bpalertsystem@gmail.com, and we're on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook at OAFC Podcast. If you'd like to know more about Push the Boundary, you can visit pushtheboundary.co.uk and follow them on Twitter at PTB_OAFC. The match stats are compiled and presented by Thomas Berry, and you can follow Thomas, spelled Tomos, on Twitter at Thomas Berry. The title music for the show is Delirio by Manchester DJ and producer Starion. You can visit redlaserrecords.bandcamp.com for more info, and the latest releases. If you like the show, please do review and subscribe on whichever platform you listen. Thanks for listening.